Ariel Helwani in New York City for the UFC on Fox 3 press conference, which goes down May 5th in New Jersey. And we're being joined by UFC President Dana White. And Dana, much to get to. We haven't talked to you in a week, and it seems like there's 100 things to talk about. But first, let's talk about this show. I remember talking to you after you announced that the Nate Diaz versus Jim Miller fight would take place on this card. You said it wasn't going to be the main event. Now it is the main event. Why'd you change your mind?
That's the way it worked out. Yeah, I don't know if I changed my mind. I mean, you guys always ask me questions, and I give you the answers that I can give you at that time. It's just like Montreal and, a lot of other things that, as we're here in New York, I said I'd have New York done for, the last 4 years. Tons of things change.
Was that, or you were just saying hello to someone?
Fans are talking.
Do you have an update on New York, by the way?
Should be done this year.
Really? As you've said the last 5 years.
Yeah. We're here. We're working on this thing hard, and have been for years. And again, I mean, it's looking good. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. I don't want to make any more predictions, but my prediction is eventually.
So I'm a little confused about the lightweight picture right now. Obviously, you want Frankie to go down, but you just said that the winner of this fight is going to fight for the title. Where does that now leave Anthony Pettis?
We're probably going to give that leaves Pettis looking for another fight, and it depends. I mean, if let's say we end up giving Frankie the rematch, Frankie gets the rematch, this thing's going to be, these guys fight May 5th. Maybe they fight, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
So you still really don't know what you're going to do with the whole situation?
I have no idea. No clue.
All you do know is that at some point the winner of this fight will probably get a title shot.
All I do know is I've been on the road for like 3 weeks, and I got home yesterday, and now I'm standing here in New York, and I have a lot of people that I need to talk to.
Let's talk about some of the other fights on this card. When you were putting this card together, like a Barry Johnson fight, they're not the biggest names of the world, but they'll produce. Do you need to put those kind of fights on Fox now, considering the fact that the last show went, the distance, all 3 fights, and they weren't the most exciting fights?
Well, we get everybody's bitching because the first fight went too fast, the second fight went too long. I really don't give a shit about stuff like that. We always put together the best cards we can put together. You put together these fights that guys talk a ton of shit, and you're like, oh my God, wait till this fight happens, and it goes out and it goes to a 3-round decision. You never know what's going to happen. We just put on the best fights that we can possibly put on. And then as far as, guys like Johnson and Barry, I mean, that's what these fights on television are for, to showcase fighters and introduce them to the masses. So this is what these cards are designed to do.
Friday night in Australia, you had the weird judging situation. Was that one of the lowest points for you as UFC president? Because it seemed like, yes, obviously there wasn't a winner, it wasn't correct, but we were robbed of that moment, that 4th round moment, which would have been so great on television and in the audience.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine the energy that was in that building that during that fight in that 3rd round, and how McCall ended that round. And I'm sure in everybody's homes on television, imagine them coming out and saying the fight is a draw, we're going to a 4th round. You're right, it would have been epic on a card that was already incredible. So, yeah, we were robbed.
Any idea when the rematch will take place?
Don't know. We're still working on that, too.
The good news is everyone's very excited about the flyweights.
Yeah, as they should have been before that fight even happened. I mean, going into that card, I've been excited about the flyweights forever. It's funny because people over the last however many years have been terrorizing me. When are we going to bring in a 125-pound division? When's that going to? And then it comes and they're like, oh, 125-pound division. Give me a break. I knew exactly what those guys were going to do that night, and they went out and did it. And if you're not excited about the flyweights, you're an idiot and you're not a fight fan.
Could you clear up your situation with Strikeforce for us? Obviously, you weren't there on Saturday night. Is there anything more that you could tell us about your relationship with Strikeforce and Showtime now? Yeah,
I would like to say the story that came out recently, about things that were said, was supposed to be a private conversation and not said in front of the whole world.
Which story? On our site or on a different site?
No, on a different site. MMA Junkie. MMA Junkie wrote a story that was supposed to be a private conversation between me and the gentleman who wrote it. And despite our creative differences between me and Showtime, the guys over there I do not dislike. Don't hate these guys. I don't have any ill will to them, and I would never say anything publicly like that to embarrass the network or embarrass them. What happens between a bunch of men behind the scenes when they're doing business, needs to be left behind the scenes sometimes, you know, and that was never meant to be public. So right here, right now, I'd like to publicly apologize for that stuff being printed and for the whole world to read, and it was never meant to be. You know, those were private conversations that I had that no way in hell should have ever been published. Those weren't quotes from me. Those weren't something that you know, the way that this normally works when you work with a journalist is you sit down, you have a topic that you're being interviewed about. Can I quote you on that? Is that a quote? Back and blah, blah, blah. That was never done. It was never done that way. It was never meant to be a story, and the guy who wrote it knows it.
Just curious what happened, though, because you said you were very excited about being a part of Strikeforce. You got the baby. You were thinking about even going to Columbus, and then you weren't there. Are you able to elaborate, or would you rather keep that private?
No, I can, and it's pretty simple. You know, we had 4 meetings. I guess we had 4 meetings probably in that ballpark, and you know, obviously there's some creative differences between me and the producer of the show, and this guy's not a bad guy. You know, he and I have some issues with each other as far as where we think we are, as far as, you know, creatively. I'll just say creatively. Creatively, we have some differences. Let's put it that way, and we're always gonna. And let's put it this way: he's not going to be sending me any Christmas cards anytime soon or anything like that. It's not like we're going to be hanging out or whatever, especially after that story. But you know, everything, you know, that was in there has been said to each other, you know, behind the scenes. You know, if I saw him out publicly, he's a very nice guy. I would walk over and say hi to him and shake his hand. It doesn't matter that we can't get along creatively, but that's basically what happened. We don't get along creatively, and you know, while he has that type of power, I guess we won't be. I won't be in the mix.
And I got a bone to pick with you because yesterday I was doing my show, the MMA Hour, which you can catch Mondays on MMAfighting.com. But I was interviewing Ronda Rousey, and in the middle of the interview, I don't know if you know this, you called her, and you interrupted our interview, and it was a live interview.
Oh, I did. Okay.
And she dropped me for you. Could you imagine that in a live interview? But the best part about it was she forgot that we stayed on the line. So she came back to us not knowing that we were still there and was yelling at the top of her lungs. She sounded like the happiest woman in the world. What did you say to her?
I don't know. I mean, I've been talking to Misha. That's the other thing too. Leading up to this fight with the women, you know, I've been talking to them, you know, the whole way through, and all the promotion behind that thing. You know, Showtime came up with that awesome spot. Spot was incredible, and then we produced all the. We had already produced all this. You know, all this stuff to promote the fight, and we scrapped it all and made it consistent with what Showtime had done. And you know, I'd been very involved with the whole thing behind the scenes, and you know, I talked to them. I talked to Misha yesterday. I talked to Ronda again today. So you know.
Did her performance maybe change your stance on women's MMA? It was very dominant, and already everyone's talking. It had 500,000 views on YouTube. The highlights 24 hours later. Did that at all change your stance?
No, it doesn't change my stance. I've never said anything negative about women fighting in mixed martial arts. What I've said is there aren't enough good women to create an entire division. But every once in a while, you'll have some one-off fights that will be big and will be and this was one of them. I personally think this is the biggest fight in women's MMA history. I think it was the biggest fight ever as far as the women go, and I think Ronda Rousey is going to be a big star.
And there could be some others down the line with perhaps Chris Cyborg, maybe even Gina Carano. Just a few more things before we let you go. It was fascinating watching your Twitter feed on Saturday night because obviously you didn't know about this Brandon Sailing character that fought on the undercard, and you were finding out along with all of us. Is there any update on how he even got on the card?
Yeah, apparently what this guy did is he lied on his application to the Athletic Commission in Ohio, and he lied on his application to the Athletic Commission in New Jersey. So, to the best of my understanding, obviously this guy's never going to fight for us ever again, and he might never fight again. I know he's been suspended by both states, and then all these other commissions follow a suspension from other states. And, you know, for this guy to ever get licensed again, he'd have to go for a hearing before the athletic commissions. And I find it hard to believe that this guy will ever be licensed again, so he better go find another job.
Rampage Jackson on Twitter all night long has been saying this is his last fight coming up. He's in a weird spot. He's going through a lot of stuff. Do you know what he's talking about?
I talked to Rampage yesterday for about an hour and a half before all the tweets started, and you know, Rampage just lost, and I think Rampage takes his losses hard. You know, we'll see what happens. You know, I'm always on again, off again with him. Right. You know, as it is anyway. But listen, I have no beef with Rampage. I don't dislike Rampage or anything like that. You know, I just think he takes the losses really hard, and he takes criticism real hard too.
He had a very interesting interview with Fighters Only where he said that a UFC doctor gave him or told him to take testosterone. He also in that interview said some stuff that he said to me which never happened. So I'm wondering, did that stuff actually happen with the UFC doctor?
No. And when I talked to Rampage yesterday, and Lorenzo had talked to him right after we heard that, and he said none of that is true. None of that is true. He didn't say any of that. So
they misquoted him.
Who knows, man? Who knows? You know, where that I heard about it the first time was at the first press conference in Australia, and I kind of got into it a little bit with the reporter, and to be honest, and you know, to shed some light on Rampage's side of it, let me tell you what, this guy was a prick. This guy was a prick. He came up to me. He was trying to put words into my mouth, and I said to him, "I see what you're doing here, and you're not going to play that with me." As he was talking to me, we were talking about testosterone replacement therapy and all these other things. Then he come back and he said, "Well, you just said," I said, "I didn't say that." I said, "That is not what I said, and I see what you're doing. Don't play this game with me," in the middle of the interview. So for us to sit back and say, "Oh, Rampage probably said all this stuff," and the report or whatever, I dealt with this guy that day. This guy's a prick. You know, this guy was acting like he was doing some investigative work for 60 minutes in the way that he was interviewing, and he started saying shit back to me that I didn't just say. You know, so you know, I think you got to look at both sides of this story, because I've dealt with tons of media, and I'm always honest with the way that it goes down and what happens. You've dealt with me for years, and many other guys have, and this guy was a fucking weasel.
Okay, final question. This Friday, live on FX, you've got the premiere of The Ultimate Fighter, and one of the big news stories coming out was Dakota Cochrane and his past in gay pornography. Did you know that he had a past? Was he upfront about it? He has told us he was upfront. Did you know, and did you have any reservations about putting him on the show in the first episode?
He was absolutely 100% upfront. When you come on to The Ultimate Fighter, you get drug tested. You have extensive background tests, checkups. I mean, we do everything on these guys, medicals, et cetera, and he was 100% upfront and honest. We've had guys who've come onto the show and have not been as upfront and honest, and we end up finding out before they ever make air. We were well aware of what he had done, and so was FX.
You're cool with it?
I'm cool with it.
All right. The Ultimate Fighter.
Cool with it?
I'm cool with it, yeah. Yeah. Cool. Is that it?
Then I guess we're all cool with it.
Then we're cool with it. And you can see Dakota Cochrane this Friday live on FX. It's the premiere of The Ultimate Fighter Season 15, coached by Uriah Faber and Dominic Cruz. And also on Friday, tickets go on sale for the UFC's return to New Jersey, UFC on Fox #3. Thank you so much for the time, Dana.
Thank you, buddy.